I was pregnant. When my husband announced the baby wasn't his in front of our entire family, all because I accused him of cheating, refused to drop it, claimed I was being gaslit, and pushed until he finally snapped. I'm 32F and currently pregnant with my first child. My husband Ethan is 35. I'm posting because something happened that completely detonated my marriage, and I need to know if I'm actually wrong here, or if people are just uncomfortable with women demanding answers. I want to be clear from the start. Yes, I'm pregnant, and yes, that matters. Pregnancy puts you in a vulnerable position emotionally and physically. You're literally depending on someone else while your body does something massive, and I don't think it's unreasonable to expect transparency and reassurance from your partner during that time. Ethan and I have been together for 7 years, married for 4. Our relationship has always been fine, stable. He's logical, calm, very controlled. I'm more emotionally aware and communicative. I'm the one who initiates conversations about feelings, relationship health, and boundaries. I've always been the one doing the emotional labor. That dynamic worked for us, or at least I thought it did. Once I got pregnant, things started to shift. Not dramatically at first, but enough that I noticed. Ethan began working later than usual. His texts got shorter. He was distracted when we talked. Affection dropped off. He said it was stress, work, and adjusting to the idea of becoming a dad, but something didn't sit right with me. The change felt deeper than that. Before anyone jumps in, no, I didn't find messages. I didn't catch him with another woman. I didn't have screenshots or proof. What I had was a consistent change in behavior and energy, and I don't think intuition should be dismissed just because it doesn't come with receipts. People cheat without leaving obvious trails all the time. I brought it up gently at first. I asked if everything was okay. He said yes. I asked if something was going on at work or if he was overwhelmed. He said no. I asked again later, trying a different angle, explaining how disconnected I felt. Each time, he denied anything being wrong, but his tone got sharper. That's when I started feeling uneasy. If nothing is happening, why get irritated by questions? As weeks went on, every denial felt less reassuring and more dismissive. He kept telling me I was overthinking, that pregnancy hormones were making me anxious, that nothing had changed. Being told my perception of reality was wrong over and over again made me feel manipulated. That's when I used the word gaslighting, because that's what it felt like. I wasn't inventing changes, I was reacting to them. I didn't let it go. I'll admit that. I couldn't. From my perspective, this was about trust. I was carrying his child. My body was taking on all the risk. I felt entitled to honesty and reassurance. When I asked him why my concerns upset him so much, he said I was interrogating him and making him feel like a criminal in his own home. I told him that if he had nothing to hide, he wouldn't be so defensive. I said that repeatedly. I also told him that if he kept brushing me off, I might need to talk to other people because I couldn't carry this stress alone while pregnant. That wasn't meant as a threat. It was me being honest about my limits. He took it as pressure. The conversations became more frequent. Daily, yes. I would bring it up because nothing felt resolved. Every time he said, "Nothing is going on," but offered no explanation for the distance, it felt like another dismissal. I wasn't asking for perfection. I was asking for clarity. Things came to a head right before a large family gathering at his parents' house. His entire extended family was there. Parents, siblings, cousins, aunts. It was already tense between us. Before we left, I confronted him again. I told him I was tired of feeling like I was being kept in the dark. I said if he was lying, it would come out eventually. I said I couldn't live with this level of uncertainty while pregnant. During that argument, paternity came up. I need to be honest about that. I said something like, "At this point, I don't even know what's real anymore." It was frustration. I did not actually believe the baby wasn't his. But yes, the implication was there. I didn't think he'd take it literally, and I didn't think it would escalate the way it did. We went to the gathering tense, and barely speaking. Someone eventually asked how the pregnancy was going. I stayed quiet. Ethan didn't. Instead of deflecting or changing the subject, he stood up and said, in front of everyone, that since he was being accused of cheating and lying constantly, he didn't even know if the baby was his anymore. In front of his entire family, I was blindsided. I started crying immediately. I felt humiliated and exposed. Whatever issues we were having should have stayed private. No matter how angry he was, publicly questioning paternity crossed a line. That's not something you say out loud in front of parents, siblings, and extended family. The room went silent. Some people looked shocked. Some looked uncomfortable. I felt like I had just been branded untrustworthy while carrying his child. Ethan left shortly after. I stayed, trying to pull myself together while people awkwardly avoided eye contact. Afterward, instead of focusing on what he did, everyone focused on what I'd said before. I was told I pushed him too far, that I embarrassed him first, that I should have trusted him, that I should have dropped it. No one seemed to care that I was pregnant and publicly humiliated. I'm now being painted as paranoid, controlling, and manipulative. I don't see it that way. I see a woman who sensed something was wrong and refused to be placated. I never accused him of cheating as fact. I asked questions. I demanded reassurance. I refused to be told my reality wasn't real. Yet I'm the one being blamed for his outburst. I'm the one being told I caused this, and I genuinely don't understand how demanding honesty from your spouse makes you the villain, especially when you're pregnant and vulnerable. Is it really acceptable for a man to publicly question paternity just because his pregnant wife won't accept vague reassurances and keeps pushing for the truth? Edit. I'm adding this because a lot of people are reacting as if I walked into this situation with zero self-awareness or like I randomly exploded on my husband for fun. That's not accurate, and I'm honestly frustrated by how quickly people are flattening this into, "You're crazy, end of story." First, I need to clarify something that keeps getting thrown back at me. Yes, paternity came up before the family gathering, but not in the way people are implying. I did not accuse Ethan of not being the father as some calculated attack. I did not say, "I think this baby isn't yours." What I said during an argument where he was again dismissing my concerns was that I didn't know what was real anymore if he kept lying to me. That's a very different thing, and context matters. People are acting like I planted the idea in his head maliciously. What actually happened is that I was emotionally exhausted from weeks of being stonewalled and told my perceptions were wrong. When someone keeps insisting nothing is happening while everything feels different, you start questioning reality. That's not manipulation. That's a normal human reaction. Second, a lot of commenters seem obsessed with the idea that because I didn't find messages or catch him in bed with someone, my concerns were invalid. That's an incredibly narrow way to look at trust. Cheating isn't always sloppy. Emotional withdrawal, defensiveness, and changes in routine matter. They are indicators, not proof, but relationships aren't courtrooms. I wasn't trying to convict him. I was trying to understand what was happening in my marriage before bringing a child into it. I also keep seeing people say, "I wouldn't let it go." That's true, I didn't, and I stand by that. When you're pregnant, letting it go isn't always an option. Stress affects your health. Anxiety affects your body. Being told to just calm down while you feel disconnected from your partner is not reassurance, it's dismissal. For those accusing me of weaponizing therapy language, I didn't pull words like gaslighting out of thin air to sound smart or trendy. When someone repeatedly tells you that what you're observing isn't happening and attributes it to your hormones, instead of engaging with the concern, that is emotionally destabilizing. You don't need proof of cheating for that dynamic to be harmful. Another thing people are misrepresenting is the idea that I was threatening him. Saying I might need support if something was wrong is not blackmail. It's reality. I don't have my family nearby. His family is the support system we've relied on. If my marriage was cracking and I was pregnant, of course I would need help. Acting like mentioning that is coercive feels disingenuous. I also want to address the narrative that Ethan was some calm, long-suffering saint who finally snapped. He wasn't silent or meek. He was cold, dismissive, and increasingly irritated. He shut conversations down instead of engaging. He didn't say, "I understand why you're scared, let's talk." He said, "You're imagining things over and over. That wears you down." Yes, I brought things up daily. I'm not denying that, but that's because nothing was resolved. Reassurance isn't repeating "nothing's wrong" like a script. Reassurance is meeting your partner emotionally. He didn't do that. As for the family gathering, people keep acting like I ambushed him publicly first. I did not stand up and accuse him of cheating in front of everyone. I was quiet. I was withdrawn. I was tense. Yes, but I didn't air our issues. He chose to escalate it to that level. Whatever frustration he had with me did not require announcing paternity doubts to a room full of people. And no, crying afterward wasn't a performance. Being publicly humiliated while pregnant is devastating. There is no version of that moment where I wasn't going to break down. Saying that proves I'm manipulative is honestly cruel. To the people saying I got what I deserved, I want you to think carefully about what you're endorsing. I pushed for honesty. I refused to be placated. I demanded accountability. That doesn't make me perfect, but it doesn't make me abusive either. Publicly questioning paternity is not a reasonable response to marital conflict, no matter how annoyed you are. I'm also seeing comments saying I should have just trusted him. Trust is not blind obedience. Trust is built through consistency and emotional presence. When those disappear, questions are inevitable. Expecting silence from a pregnant woman because asking questions is inconvenient is not fairness. Do I think everything I said was perfectly worded? No. Do I think emotions were high on both sides? Obviously, but the idea that I somehow forced him to humiliate me publicly feels like a convenient way to absolve him of responsibility for his own choices. I wasn't wrong to push, I was wronged first, and if that makes people uncomfortable, maybe that says more about how much discomfort people have with women refusing to swallow vague reassurances and smile through it. And I'll say this bluntly, since some people seem to need it spelled out, if men don't want to be accused, they should act trustworthy. Update 1. I thought at worst people would say we both handled things badly. Instead, the tone shifted almost immediately once the story left my control. The first thing that changed was Ethan's family. Initially, right after the gathering, everyone was awkward but polite. His mother hugged me. His sister texted that things would calm down. I assumed time would smooth it over. That illusion lasted about 3 days. Then the questions started. Not supportive ones. Careful, probing ones. His mother asked me what I'd been accusing Ethan of, specifically. His sister asked how long I'd been bringing this up. An aunt asked whether I had any proof. I answered honestly, which in hindsight may have been a mistake, because once they realized there was no smoking gun, the narrative shifted fast. Suddenly, it wasn't about what Ethan said anymore. It was about why I pushed him there. I felt blindsided by that turn. I'm his wife. I'm pregnant. I expected a baseline of protection. Instead, people started saying things like, "You were under a lot of stress, and maybe you didn't realize how intense you were being." Those qualifiers stung more than outright criticism. Ethan, for his part, stopped engaging emotionally almost entirely. He didn't apologize again, but he also didn't defend himself the way I thought he would. Instead, he asked for space. Then, a few days later, he asked for something much more concrete: counseling, a DNA test, and a trial separation. I won't pretend I took that well. I told him it felt punitive. I said asking for a DNA test after publicly questioning paternity was cruel and unnecessary. I reminded him that I hadn't cheated. I framed his request as distrust layered on top of humiliation. He didn't argue with me. He just said that after weeks of being accused of lying, he needed certainty and boundaries. I agreed to counseling because refusing would have made me look unreasonable, not because I believed it was necessary. From my perspective, the issue wasn't communication. It was his refusal to engage honestly from the start. Still, I went. The counseling sessions did not go the way I expected. I assumed the therapist would validate my feelings and maybe help Ethan see how dismissive he'd been. Instead, the focus kept circling back to my behavior. How often I raised the issue, how I phrased my concerns, whether I allowed space for answers that didn't align with my fear. When the therapist asked what evidence I had that Ethan was cheating, I explained the pattern changes, the distance, the intuition. She pressed gently but firmly. Had I found proof? Had anyone confirmed anything? When I said no, she didn't accuse me, but she did say something that stuck with me in a way I didn't like. Then, what you were responding to was fear, not facts. I felt invalidated. That's the only word that fits. Fear doesn't come from nowhere, and reducing everything to "you were anxious" felt like the same dismissal I'd been fighting against. I said as much. The therapist acknowledged that fear deserves compassion, but also pointed out that accusations have consequences, especially repeated ones. I didn't agree with that framing then. It felt like blame. The DNA test came back a couple of weeks later. Ethan is the father. I won't lie, I felt vindicated, not relieved. Vindicated. I told myself this proved my instincts weren't wrong, that if he hadn't reacted the way he did, we wouldn't have gotten here. I expected that result to reset things, to make him soften, to show him that his public statement was unjustified. It didn't. Instead, he said something I wasn't prepared for. He said the test answered one question, but it didn't repair what had already been broken. He told me that being accused daily, being threatened with exposure, being told he was gaslighting when he wasn't, it changed how he saw me. He said he felt like no answer would ever be enough because the accusation itself had become the point. That hurt more than I expected, and I reacted badly. I told him he was making himself the victim. I said he was ignoring the stress pregnancy puts on a person. I reminded him that his words at the gathering were what everyone remembered, not my private fears. He didn't argue. He just said he couldn't go back to how things were. The separation became real then, not dramatic, not explosive, practical. He moved into the guest room first, then talked about finding a short-term place nearby. His family stopped checking in on me. Invitations dried up. Group chats went quiet. Even people who hadn't been there seemed to have an opinion, and none of them were on my side. I tried to explain myself to a few friends, but the reaction was similar. They sympathized with my stress, but questioned my choices. One of them asked, very plainly, "Why didn't you stop when he asked you to?" I didn't have a good answer that didn't sound like justification. That's when the isolation really set in. I still believe what he did was extreme. I still believe public humiliation crossed a line. But I'm starting to see that proving the baby was his didn't erase the damage leading up to that moment. I proved one thing. I didn't prove that I was fair, or measured, or willing to trust. I'm not ready to say I was wrong in the way people want me to say it. I don't think I imagined everything. I don't think asking questions makes me abusive. But I also can't ignore that the consequences keep stacking up and none of them reversed when the DNA results came in. I proved the baby was his. I didn't realize that wasn't the only thing I was on trial for. Final update. This is the last time I'm posting about this, because at this point there isn't anything left to clarify, defend, or argue into submission. The situation has settled into what it's going to be, whether I agree with it or not. Ethan moved out permanently about 6 weeks after the DNA results came back. There wasn't a dramatic fight, no screaming, no last blow-up that people always expect. It was procedural. He told me he'd found a place nearby, close enough for co-parenting, but far enough that we weren't tripping over each other emotionally. He framed it as space to reset, but it was obvious this wasn't temporary in the way I kept telling myself the separation was. We started working with a mediator instead of the counselor. That alone should have told me how far things had gone. The language shifted from repair to logistics. Schedules, boundaries, communication rules. He was calm throughout all of it, which somehow made it worse. I wanted anger. I wanted guilt. I wanted him to say he understood why I pushed the way I did. Instead, he stayed level, factual, and distant. I kept trying to return to the original issue, because in my mind, that was still the root of everything. I told him that none of this would have happened if he'd just reassured me properly from the beginning. I said that if he hadn't minimized my concerns, I wouldn't have escalated. I framed it as a reaction, not an action. He listened, then said something that finally shut the conversation down. He said, "You didn't ask for reassurance, you demanded confession." That sentence still irritates me, because it strips away all the nuance I feel existed. But I can't deny that, from his perspective, that's exactly what it looked like. He said once he realized nothing he said would ever be enough, he stopped trying to prove his innocence and started protecting himself instead. The public comment at the family gathering, as cruel as it felt to me, was him reaching the point where he no longer cared about managing the situation quietly. We finalized the separation paperwork shortly after. It's not a divorce yet, but it's headed there. He's already made it clear he's not interested in reconciliation. He's willing to co-parent respectfully, communicate about the baby, and attend necessary appointments if needed. That's it. No emotional rebuilding, no working through it. He said trust doesn't come back just because intentions were good. Socially, things have not bounced back for me the way I expected them to once the DNA test proved he was the father. I genuinely thought that would change how people saw the situation. It didn't. If anything, it solidified the idea that I'd pushed without cause. People stopped saying both sides and started saying things like, stress isn't an excuse, or fear doesn't justify accusations. Even friends who still check in with me keep a careful distance from the topic, like they don't want to be pulled into defending something they no longer believe in. Ethan's family remains cordial but distant. They ask about the pregnancy, but it feels obligatory. I'm no longer invited to casual gatherings. Holidays are already being discussed as separate arrangements. No one says it outright, but it's clear they don't trust me the way they used to. They see me as volatile, unpredictable, someone who might turn private anxiety into public fallout if pushed. My own family hasn't been much more supportive, which surprised me. My mother told me I played chicken with a marriage and lost. That still feels unfair to hear, but I can't pretend it didn't land. A couple of relatives have outright told me I need to let go of the narrative that I was protecting myself and accept that I hurt someone who didn't deserve it. I don't agree with the framing, but I hear it constantly now. I've thought a lot about whether I regret what I did, and this is where people are going to be disappointed if they're expecting a neat redemption arc. I regret the outcome. I regret the isolation. I regret how exposed and small I feel now. But I don't regret insisting on the truth the way people want me to. I don't believe silence is healthier than confrontation. I don't believe women, especially pregnant women, should swallow fear just to keep relationships comfortable. I don't believe asking hard questions makes someone abusive. What I do recognize uncomfortably is that how you ask those questions matters more than I wanted to admit. Pressure turns suspicion into reality in people's minds, whether it's fair or not. Ethan says the marriage didn't end because of one comment at a family gathering. He says it ended because I stopped seeing him as an autonomous person and started treating him like a problem to solve or a lie to expose. I don't fully accept that interpretation, but I can't deny that by the end, I was more focused on being right than being connected. As for the baby, that's where things are the most complicated emotionally. He's involved, he shows up, he asks about appointments, he plans for the future, but it's all compartmentalized. There's a wall between us that didn't exist before, and I know I helped build it. He doesn't share fears or excitement the way he used to. He treats me like a co-parent, not a partner, and that hurts more than I expected it to. People keep asking me if I'd do anything differently if I could go back. I've thought about that question obsessively. Would I handle the timing differently? Yes. Would I avoid involving family at all costs? Probably. Would I push less? I don't know. That's the honest answer. Because in my mind, backing down felt like betraying myself. Letting it go felt like accepting a lie, even if there wasn't one. So no, I'm not going to say I deserved everything that happened. I'm also not going to pretend I was a passive victim of circumstances. I escalated. I pushed. I used language and pressure that left no room for resolution. I can hold both of those truths without collapsing into shame. Ethan and I will raise this child together, just not as a couple. The marriage is over. The narrative is set. People have chosen sides. I don't get to rewrite that. What I can say, without softening it or dressing it up, is this. I believed pregnancy gave me moral leverage, that fear justified force, and that insisting on truth excused how I went about it. I don't think those beliefs make me evil, but I do see now that they made me destructive. I still believe I had the right to ask. I don't believe I had the right to corner him until he broke. And while I won't pretend I'm grateful for how this ended, I won't lie and say I'd simply roll over next time either. This is where it stands. There's no reconciliation coming. No dramatic forgiveness. Just consequences that aren't going away, and a version of myself I'm going to have to live with, whether I like how she acted or not.